Yes, all right. Welcome to the second keynote session of Philosophy of Computer Games 2018 conference, Values in Play. My name is Olli and I have the pleasure to announce the second keynote speaker of this conference, Dr. Miguel Sicart. Miguel Sicart is a play scholar, game designer and an educator, and he's also an associate professor here at the Center for Computer Games at the University of Copenhagen. His background is in literature, philosophy of technology, and game studies. He's also the author of many thought-provoking journal articles and conference papers on topics such as game design, game mechanics, and procedural game. He's also written 3 books published on MIT Press. Among them is the first scholarly monograph on ethics in computer games, a pivotal book, The Ethics of Computer Games, which was published in 2009. Since then, he has also authored Beyond Choices, the Design of Ethical Gameplay, and most recently in 2014, Play Matters, in the Playful Thinking series of MIT Press. Without further ado, let us welcome Miguel Sicart.
Thank you. Thanks. You should clap at the end if you're satisfied. So I am here. I'm sorry, I don't mind promise you drinks, but you have to still listen to me for an hour. Thanks for having me here. It's an honor to be keynoting the Philosophy of Games conference. And I look forward to this keynote because it's been a while since I've done work on ethics and work on game studies, and I kind of see myself these days a little bit as a retired game studies scholar, so I don't play that many video games anymore. I'm sorry, I'm actually literally, I don't know what I'm doing here, because what I like doing is I like talking about play and people playing, and that's what drives me. And video games, to be perfectly honest, and I've been saying this for a few years now, they bore me to death. So today, I'm not going to talk about any specific video game. I'm not going to do any analysis of anything. I don't do that kind of work anymore. Maybe I'll do it in the future, but right now, that's not where I am. So what am I going to be talking about today? What is these 3 themes for the ethics of play? So that's the menu of the day, and I'm going to start with a lot of precaution, because one of the problems of being a keynote speaker is that there's this risk of setting an agenda. And that risk is doubled when the title of the presentation is Themes for the Ethics of Play. Then it's fairly reasonable to think that you're going to listen to me saying, this is what we should be studying now. So, disclaimer, and it's the first time I say it of many, this is what I want to study now. I think there's many other themes that we can touch, but what I'm going to be interested in or doing today is showing you what I'm interested in studying the ethics of play. So I'm going to start explaining a little bit what do I think by a keynote and what is my agenda. And then I'll present the 3 topics. One of them has to do with the industry. The other one has to do with machines in general. It's not totally connected with video games in any case, but I think it's a topic that's important if you're studying play. And the third one is perhaps the sort of the most philosophical of all these topics, and it's also the one that I'm less certain of. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the 3 themes I'm interested in the study of play, and particularly the study of the ethics of play. And so what's interesting and what's great about being a keynote speaker is nobody told me what to say. So, and I know that now the organizers are thinking like, what have we done? It's okay, it'll be fine, I think. One of the temptations when I've been doing game studies and play studies for a while, and one of the temptations is to say, well, now I have a captive audience. I'm like a keynote, you have to listen to me. Because it's me and then the drinks, but it's first me. So one of the temptations is to say, like, I'm going to talk about things I know a lot. I'm going to speak ex cathedra here, and I'm going to give you the truth, capital T. Yeah, I've done that before, or I've tried to do that before. It doesn't work out for me. So what best approach can I take than to say, what I'm going to present today is absolute, total, very early stages work in progress. In fact, I hope I'm going to look a little bit like that by the end. These are the topics that interest me. I have no clear answers for you. I have no clear conclusions. I'm just going to be asking questions. And what's more fascinating is that I'm going to use you, my captive audience, to crowdsource my literature review. So sorry for that, but I'm going to be talking about a lot of things that I'm on early stages of figuring out and researching, and I'm pretty sure there's some cutting-edge work that I haven't seen. There's so much good work published in game studies that I just cannot keep up, so I'm pretty sure that some of you either have written about these topics or know somebody who has written about these topics. So please, write to me, tweet at me, come with a piece of paper. You can also hit me in the head and ask me the questions, but tell me what am I missing, because that's really important. I don't see this as, again, me telling any truth. I'm just telling you what I'm interested in and what I'm going to be working. And yes, if you did not know me before, I walk a lot when I talk, so sorry for that. As Ollie said, I've written a bunch of books, and by the way, that at the bottom, that was the original cover for my first book. I wonder what they thought the book was going to be about, but it's, whoops, I think it got much better, like the cover is much better. So, my interest in ethics started with video games and sort of the act of digital play. Then I moved on to design, and then I stopped playing games and I started thinking about play. And so the interesting thing for me from a historical point of view is that this is the second time I keynote for the philosophy of games. In 2009, I was keynoting at the philosophy of games, and I was presenting, again, work in progress. I was presenting what ended up being the core argument of beyond choices. And I was there, giving answers and telling you how it is. And now, 9 years have passed. I'm older and I only have questions left. And I only have the intense will of not necessarily having to be right. I don't want anymore to be right. I just want to, say stuff and see if it works. Now, the problem is that in a keynote, you're probably expecting me to say some clever things. I'm not going to say anything clever. That's not going to happen. What I'm going to say is, there are things that we haven't looked at that I think I want to look at. Or there are things that I believe that the study of the ethics of play needs to focus on that I haven't seen addressed, and I think we should be addressing. So this is an agenda for me because I want to keep on working on ethics and play, and I want to keep an eye on what's happening with video games, but I don't want to necessarily ask questions that I've asked before. I'm not going to focus on issues of what video games represent, the content of video games. I'm less interested in that, and I'm more interested in sort of taking a sort of a broader perspective. So I insist for the last time, this is my agenda. These are the three things I'm going to be working with. I don't expect anybody to work on them if they actually sort of catch some interest. And this is only going to be exploratory work. And if you have any suggestions, please tell me. Now I'm done with the introduction. Let's talk about these three themes. And why three themes? So I wanted to make a presentation that had one common hidden topic, however, one that showed the multiplicity and the diversity of studies that I think we can conduct, or I can conduct, in the study of play, particularly when we look at phenomena like digital play, computer games, but also other forms of play. And what better place to start than the video game industry, which for an ethicist is great, right? Because if you want to think about ethical issues, and you think about the video game industry, it's like an endless stream of topics. It's like a horrible industry producing horrible things for horrible people. Most of the time. There's also things that are not horrible. So when I was preparing this talk, I thought, okay, my case study, my initial example of things that I'm interested in to analyze is going to be the ArenaNet controversy. The technical word, I think, in the technical term in ethics is fuck up. ever since Kotaku made a really nice piece on the growth culture in Riot Games, which would have also been an excellent case study, but I'm going to stick to my original one. For those of you who have not heard, ArenaNet was at the center of one of these periodic things that happened with the video games industry when the company decided to fire two of their developers because one of them, a woman, replied, cleverly, but cleverly, and on point to somebody who was mansplaining how to do her job. So she replied on Twitter, the thing escalated, one of her colleagues came to her defense, the gaming internet exploded, they are, attacking and insulting the community, so the result is that these two developers were fired. What a horrible place to work, the games industry. No, I mean, it's probably great, and I know a lot of people who are very happy, but to be perfectly honest, we need to think more thoroughly about these products that we analyze, that we consume, that we play with. They are produced within very specific value domains and value systems. These big corporations and small indie developers that develop video games, there's a lot of let's call it controversial, is too mild. There's a lot of value systems that we don't analyze and that I think drip down to the products. We have been in the study of the ethics of playing with games, we have been particularly good, in my opinion, in studying and analyzing the problem of what the video games represent and to a certain extent how the video game communities arrange themselves around these objects of representation. What I would like to think about now is how the value systems within game producers drip down to video games and how they affect the culture of playing video games. I think that we have an industry and an industrial production system that has a set of values that has gone uncontested. We have somehow criticized them, but we haven't really done our ethical duty, which is to say, what are those values? Are they causing harm? How are they reflected in the objects? How are they reflected in the communities? What is this industry doing to these products? How can we conceive that a game developer, a producer of things, sides with the most vile side of this video game community? Why do they do it? Why this focus on the video game communities as the sources of truth and value in video games? So, I think there's a number of ethical issues that we need to address as philosophers and ethicists of video games when it comes to understanding the video game industry. These are issues that have a direct impact on the products that are made and have a direct impact in the way communities are structured around these products. So the first one to me is that video games are a hit-driven industry. Both as an independent developer and as a mainstream AAA developer, if you don't have a hit traditionally, but still there, if you don't have a hit, you're done. You cannot sustain your business model for a long time if you don't have a hit. And that economic truth implies also a set of practices and a set of values. You're going to try to find a core audience that will always buy your product. You're going to try to make them faithful to your product. You're going to try to make them identify with your product because your livelihood depends on it. And so you're going to necessarily do more of the same because otherwise you might go bankrupt. Or you're going to try to find alternative ways of earning money. Maybe hit-driven industries are, going the way of the dodo and they will disappear. What are we substituting them for? And what kind of values do these economic systems that substitute the $60 package that you buy as a video game, what values do they have? And that's an important question because when I'm concerned about how boring AAA video games are, what I'm technically concerned is how often producers of video games who are people at the top of their game, typically. Some of the best artists, some of the best programmers in the world. Obviously, some of them enjoy making, brown shooters where you shoot brown people. But some others, I'm pretty sure that they want to do other things. Maybe they can't, because they are stuck to a hit-driven industry. And that drives this sort of continuous, in my opinion, continuous sort of replication of topics and replication of concepts and the small changes that we see in products every year, because change is not good for the economy of games. So I think looking at the hit-driven aspect of the games industry is an important ethical aspect that I would like to address. I also would like to address the lack of diversity. That's an obvious one. If everybody in the room is like you, you're going to make you things. And the video game industry is struggling to get better, but it still has a huge diversity problem. And that huge diversity problem, it's almost inevitable that it drips down to the products that they make. So sometimes when we think about how can something with this horrendous content happen, well, it's like there's no, if there's a bro culture, you're going to be making bro games. Not causality, but it's quite likely. What cultural and value issues happen when we don't have a diverse working force in a creative medium like video games? I think that's a question that, as a philosopher and as an ethicist of video games, I feel like I need to address. Maybe not answer, but I need to address it. Another interesting aspect is how video games are part of, and I talk a lot about money in this first part of the talk, but that's how it is, how video games are part of the economy of geek culture. And by this I mean how these video games require and enjoy being a part of a moderately exclusive and exclusivist type of culture. A culture that defines itself not only for who they are, but also for who they are not and who they are against. And how they are also feeding on a very particular type of vocal community drivers. People who run these communities. That's how geek culture asserted itself historically. At least a part of it asserted itself historically that way. And that's what the economic ties to that shouting, loud part of the video game communities. That's the source of some ethical issues. The whole internet problem. The way the company reacted was because they felt that their core audience was being attacked. Makes no sense, but still, from an economic point of view, you cannot alienate the people that put money on your table. That's a strong value statement that we should be able to inquire about. I also think that video games have tremendous media envy. They want to be cinema, they want to be books, they want to be television. I know that they are not that, but that's what they want to be, or at least some video games want to be that. Even television, even the TV is now a proper form of art. Well, video games we're still discussing now. Video games, which is, it's a discussion in and of itself. What are the consequences of this media envy? How does that affect the kind of games that get produced, that get developed, that get communicated? And I think the parallel with television is super interesting, and I there's something there that I would like to pay attention to, because it's true that we live the golden age of television, where everything is, not everything, but roughly a lot of things that are prestige TV are cloning a model established by The Sopranos, in which there's some conflicted alpha males killing other conflicted alpha males. And there's women around there for being exploited. That's a summary of The Sopranos as it would be of Westworld. And that's the prestige TV that video games we want to sort of latch to, because, media. So, to me it's interesting to question how does this media envy affect, again, the values of the production of these video games? And finally, technology. So video games are an industry that's technology-driven. Gadgets, all these, we are on this. I'm on my second VR wave. So the next time I keynote the philosophy of games in many years, we will have the third wave or the fourth wave of VR, where we've almost solved all the problems. We're almost there. And to me, this is a broader question, but it's an ecological question. Why do we need to follow this technology-driven? Why do we need more, hardware that runs faster, that consumes more resources, that generates more heat? Like there's an intrinsic idea of the goodness of technology progress embedded in the way some video games are marketed as a technology-driven, that I think it's deeply troublesome from, again, an ecological point of view. So I think all of these are issues that I'm interested in that have to do with the economy, the numbers of the video game industry, and how those numbers affect the communities of producers and the communities of consumers. And therefore, like my main interest and my main question is, what are the effects of these economic conditions in the products and the audiences of video games? Can we look at the industry, look and analyze their embedded values in their practices and see how those values have an effect in what's being produced and in the audiences? So I want to change from my old work on the ethics of computer games, where I classically trained in literature and philosophy, sat in front of a computer, played a bunch of video games, did some sort of work out with. I read some forums, I did some analysis of text in forums, I analyzed games as texts, and now I want to analyze them in the context of their production and consumption models. I think this is my natural next step. As a virtue ethicist, I cannot look at the texts themselves anymore. I need to look at the economy behind this, because the economy is crazy. Free-to-play games. We're giving you something for free. Totally for free. Are they, I've for a long time I've toyed around and researched on a paper about the ethics of free-to-play games. Because obviously free-to-play games give the games for free, but at some moment they wanted to pay, because nobody gives anything for free, and much less something that is so produced. How do we analyze the ethics of free-to-play games, if not taking into consideration the values of the production systems? We cannot. It's impossible. We can look at the content, but they are just all clones of each other. What makes them ethically interesting is the economic context in which they are produced. Or how about the overflow of video games, the fact that we need to flood players and markets with video games, the fact that we are devaluating, in my opinion, video games by just having offer everywhere. There's video games everywhere. There's the App Store, there's Steam, there's Good Old Games. Discord is now going to sell video games. Everybody wants to sell video games. There's video games everywhere. There's more noise than signal. But it's not all kinds of noise, right? Because if you go to Twitch, or if you go to Steam, or if you go to the App Store and you try to find Robert Young's video games or My Industria's phone story, they're not going to be there. We want to publish many games, as many as possible, to sustain this continuous economy of attention. But not just any game. We want only some games. And this is not only a representation question. This is not just the fact that you cannot go on Twitch and stream your gay sex games, because Twitch does not allow to do so. It's a matter of sustainability of an economy of producers. If you don't have access to Twitch, if you're going to be buried on Steam, you cannot make a livelihood of your games. An economic decision has a value implication. And we have to look at how those two things, or I have to look at how those two things are connected together. Similarly, And there's a lot of people doing great work on loot boxes and micropayments, and so the fact that technically, you know, when I was growing up, the 8-bit era, one of the best things you could say about a video game was that it was addictive. And now we're all like, oh, but no, we cannot say those things about video games. It's engaging. It's something that will, you know, emotionally, you get emotionally attached to it, but it's not addictive. Well, you know, we are pretty good as designers and developers in creating these systems of these feedback systems of reward and punishment that actually technically might make us perhaps not addicted, but definitely closer towards unhealthy and virtuous, if you want to put it in that vocabulary, uses of video games. And why? Because we have to give our video games for free, because there's too much offer, because the market is saturated. So how do we make sure that we can make a livelihood out of them? Okay, maybe not just a livelihood, perhaps you just want to get stinking rich. We just turn them into compulsion machines. Machines in which we have to invest and invest and invest because we are driven to do so. It's not only a psychological problem, it's also a commercial problem. And in general, it's also a societal problem. How do we regulate this system? It's not an easy ethical question to ask. And for those who do not want to play that game, who want to do art, and do not want to be hedge fund managers, there's always Patreon and Kickstarter, but that's playing on a very particular economy of attention and values. Making a Kickstarter is a huge amount of work, catering to a community, keeping them updated, because if the video game crowd is terrible, the Kickstarter crowd is as terrible. You miss one update and there goes all your pledges. And Patreon is the same. We all want to support people, but you know, it's an exchange, it's a commercial exchange. I give you something, you give me something back. I'm supporting an artist, but you know, the artist better deliver, because otherwise I'm going to cancel my pledge. And finally, I think there's another topic that I would like to cover, and it's probably the one that I'm going to cover first, which is the idea of games as platforms. So one of the most interesting books I've read recently is Platform Capitalism by Nick Snishek, which is an analysis of the new economic forms that come from Silicon Valley. And so like one interesting thing is that we've seen for the last few years that video games have become services. And now, either we are free to play, or with downloadable units, or with loot boxes, we perform some continuous acts of purchasing and engaging with these games, trading and with transactions with these games that are part of the activity of play. If we want to play them, we have to enter into an economic transaction, not just once, and not buying a good, and constantly performing those actions. And all of this started with Facebook games. All those Facebook games that we played many years ago, they were all for free, they were mining our data. They were turning games as services and technically games as platforms. They are commodifying our play so they can monetize our data. And ourselves. And that's a huge ethical problem. So, once we see video games as services from a platform perspective, the idea of creating a platform from which economic profit can be derived, then we can start thinking about how are these games designed in terms of the context in which we play them and the frequency in which we play them. How are these games dealing with engagement and addiction? And how are these games respecting both our privacy and the role that leisure should have in our life? So if a video game is a platform through which we engage in some kind of commercial transaction, all of those things are going to be designed for maximizing economic output. Not aesthetic output, not engagement output, just profit. Economics is at the heart of all of this. That was terrible, right? Yeah, I should be talking about values and instead I'm talking about money. So let's talk about something else. This is topic number one that I would like to cover. The second one has to do with machines. And so I'm going to take a sort of a turn in a different direction for a short while, and hopefully you can stay with me. I don't know if you've noticed, but we live in the world that fears the robot planet. robots are here, they're going to take over the world, we are doomed, all of our jobs are going to be automated. In Philosophy of Games 2043, it's going to be Robo Miguel giving a Robo Keynote to a Robo audience. Like, that's great until you look at the state of the art in robots. And of course I didn't include the very scary Boston Dynamic robots, but like that's kind of the robots where they are now. They are kind of cute. I mean, I would love to be, really substituted by one of these. I'm not afraid of these robots. I don't think these robots are particularly scary. The sort of writing robots of Boston Dynamic, those are scary, but that's a different story. These are kind of like, cute malfunctioning technologies. I like cute malfunctioning technologies. I think that maybe that's why I like video games, because they are cute malfunctioning technologies. I'm afraid of these other robots, all of these kind of automated processes that are substituting human labor because they are just cheaper. Jobs that are substituted by technically stupid algorithms. Just very simple programs doing exactly the same job as humans used to do, some years ago. Travel agents. I don't know any travel agent. They are probably. No, I think that there was a travel agency in the forest here in Denmark, in the wild, and that was the last one. There's no more travel agents. They are all gone. They have all been automated. Because that's what we can automate really well. We can automate really well very simple transactions, very simple procedures, very simple services. And so I think there's a trend that I've called soft automation, which is a substitution through algorithms and all these other keywords, machine learning, artificial intelligence, all those things that use computers to transform services into self-services, eliminating a layer of labor. Why are you listening to me talking about soft automation here? Well, there's a huge problem with this. Economically speaking, this is fantastic. That's a bit of a high-frequency trading algorithm in real time. So all of those arrows are transactions, economic transactions. It's fascinating to see. That's just computers talking to computers, trading economic data that affects us. There's a glitch in the algorithm, billions are gone. Super easy job to substitute, by the way. If you're a stock market person, do something else. Go into the arts and crafts, because you're going to be automated in no time. I'm less concerned about that kind of automation than about the kinds of automation that have to do with things like travel agency or bank services or citizen services. Renewing a passport here in Denmark, everything is digital. Renewing a passport does not mean talking to any kind of human. Unless you're not a EU citizen or not a EU citizen, in which case you talk to people, but that's a different story. These services have been all automated, right? So the problem with automation and this kind of automation is that as economically interesting as it is, it's super boring. Nobody uses these systems. We create these digital systems and we use them because we have to, but not because we want to. Not because we feel a particular interest or a particular pleasure in using them. It used to be okay to go to the bank because sometimes you talk to a human being, which might be surprising for engineers, but it's actually a really pleasurable thing to do. Talk to other people. But now we have apps. And so that's what I interact with, right? I interact with an app. And that's a problem because it's boring and I don't want to do it and I get disengaged, I get disenfranchised and I don't want to do it anymore. And that's why for the last few years, and it's a dark confession, I've been working on trying to put some of the design of playful things into the design of soft automation systems. So I've been working on making mundane services more playful. That's a thing that I've been calling it playful design, and it's not necessarily gamification. Gamification is kind of the drum count we don't want to talk about. What we do is playful design, which is totally different. It's about using the kinesthetic pleasures of play in designing the interactions for automated services. And I've been working on this, as I said, for a few years, and I think I know how to do it. which should terrify you all. Because what I'm saying is, I can perhaps technically make those digital automated self-services so pleasurable that you will not want to engage with humans, that you will accept the fact that there's no humans there anymore. And of course that means that first there's a layer of labor that disappears, and it's a very important layer of labor. Those are solid, good, middle-class jobs that vanish when you automate these things, right? But somebody like me would think like it's worth because we're making it playful. And second, you have to monetize them. And at some moment, all these nice free services that come for you, they will be monetized. You cannot pay bank fees anymore for going to the bank, but we're going to observe you. We're going to manipulate you. I think the problem is we are walking towards a digitally automated society in which most of our day-to-day mundane interactions are going to be mediated by digital systems. These digital systems will want to pass as pleasurable through the idea of play. That's why we have gamification and we have this playful design. We're always wanting to do that because it's the idea of neoliberal play. And this is kind of, to me, it's particularly troublesome because I've been doing this work. And I know how dangerous it is. I know how easy it is to use everything we know from free-to-play games and slap it on top of bank application. And man, free-to-play games, they are engaging. And we can make bank applications engagement, except maybe we don't want to make bank applications engaging. Maybe we don't want to use this idea of play and playfulness as a good thing. Maybe we should just not engage in that. At least not without thinking about what the implications of putting play everywhere has. Because we are going to start expecting everything to have this playful layer. We are going to expect our automated systems, the ones we talk to be able to respond to us in funny ways. And we'll end up discovering that it's people all the way down. People who will ignore, people who will... This is apparently an actual screenshot of somebody trying to be playful with an automatic system and realizing it's just another, bottom of the barrel job. And this is what we are going to be hiding by making it playful, by making it engaging. We are going to be hiding the disappearance or the marginalization of a very particular type of jobs. And I think that's because play has a thing about decoupling problems. Play is particularly good, and play systems, whether it's games or toys or playgrounds or all these kind of playable interactions, is a really good instrument for decoupling things in terms of representation and action. Right? Because when we are trying to build automatic systems, we create a representation and we build a system that works with that representation. When we work with play, we are also creating representations and working with those representations. And I know I'm not being very specific, but still, that's the commonality between both play and these automated systems. And so, when we think about play everywhere, when we are using and deploying the rhetorics and the techniques of play everywhere, we are essentially decoupling rules. We are saying, well, the rule of the law might be the rule of the law, but this is presented as a game. So it has its own rules. You don't need to follow those other rules, so those other rules are, distinct. I'm not saying that this is happening, I'm saying that this is a logical consequence. We may be decoupling the rules of a game imposed on a mundane system from the rules of the law. It also decouples agency. Sometimes you just want to be a citizen or a consumer, and you're casting the role of being a player. And your agency is modified. When we are deploying play everywhere, we are also playing with who or what we are when we are agents. And to me, that's very troublesome. It also decouples the spaces. I think there's a huge risk in augmented reality because we as corporations, we can undermine the commons by creating layers of interactions that we can engage with in the public space, but that are mediated through private for-profit interfaces. So I'm not sure I can, we can talk about that in the Q&A or later on, but there's something about how easy it would be to co-opt physical public spaces through augmented reality for profiteering that just makes me very uneasy. And the worst thing is that I know how to do it. I think I know how to do it. Probably I know how to do it. So, and finally, it also decouples purpose. Am I doing this because I want to be a good citizen, because I want to, transfer money, or am I doing this because it's nice and pleasurable and it feels good? Because that's what we want, right? We want to design and we want to put play everywhere so everything just feels better. That's what's driven my own research for the past few years. And shame on me as an ethicist. I feel like I'm saying, I'm building the Terminator, I'm building Skynet, please send the Terminator and kill me now. If somebody comes through the door now, it's going to be, nobody's come from the future. I'm doing something terrible as a play designer. It's hideous. I should be ashamed as an ethicist that I've used years of my life trying to make things playful without questioning whether we really want to have play everywhere. It's an assumption that I'm just not comfortable with. Final thing. Sorry, it's a very pleasurable. We all picture what's going. Anyway, that's a different story. I'll go into philosophy a little bit here for the third purpose, for the third topic, purpose, because both when I was thinking about the ethical problems of the industry and the ethical problems of putting play everywhere, I kept on going back to the idea of what makes play and the economies of play so ethically challenging. And of course, immediately, being trained as also as a play scholar, I think magic circle, separatedness, blah blah, all those other. I'm not going to magic circle anything on you. I'm just we are going to stay out of the magic circle for a while. I think the main problem that I need to address in terms of basic first philosophical questions regarding the ethics of play has to do with how do we create purpose in the activity of play. So it all starts with Bernard Suits, I think. He's the one who most explicitly writes. I think I'm not mentioning, but in passing, but I think it's on this article, Words on Play, where Suits says that all instances of play are instances of autotelic activity. Autotelicity is necessary but not sufficient for an adequate definition of play. So all play is autotelic. All play has the capacity for doing something to its purpose. And that is, to me, the key of all problems that I've presented throughout today. The notion of purpose. And it's, of course, it's a very old story and it's an old problem. There's a very conflicting historical relation between the ethics of play, but we typically see it from the perspective of the inside and the outside, or the I'm at play and I'm not at play. Who we construct ourselves as players, or at least that's the way I phrase it historically. And we keep on doing the idea of sort of the magic circle. And I think I connected to the wrong topic. The magic circle for me is an interest, because it's a non-concept. Purpose though, the autotelic nature of play, the fact that play has the capacity for defining its own purpose. I mean, when we play for a purpose, and that purpose is not the same purpose that engages and drives us to do other things. How does that purpose emerge? How is that purpose maintained and sustained? What effects does that purpose have? Because when we have something like games for change, it's really interesting. So if I'm playing, how can something change something if I'm just doing it for its own sake? I mean, maybe it's a non-question. Maybe it's just a very easy question and I just haven't thought it through. As I said at the beginning, this is the part that I have thought less through. But I still think that it's not the separatedness of play that concerns me. It's the capacity of play, or how does play work with the notion of purpose. Not meaning, purpose. Why do we play? And so, for doing that, and this is work that I just started doing right before the summer, and this is my second day at work, by the way, so I'm kind of still on holidays, I need to go back to the notion of the autotelic. And the autotelic play, in the classic literature of play, has been defined in three ways. So one is that playing is an end in itself. So playing football, playing Fortnite, playing hold down is... The purpose of those activities is playing those activities, is playing. There's no other ulterior purpose, and that's what it means that play is autotelic. Another one, closer to sort of positive psychology, would be that play is intrinsically, or playing is an activity that's intrinsically motivated. It's not the external real-life rewards that drive us, it's more like the internal rewards created during the activity of play, which is all fine because it allows us to look at sort of the importance of the design of goals, of challenges, of obstacles, the design of failure and winning conditions. So that's an interesting angle, right? At least it says something about how do we create that intrinsic motivation. And finally, the one that I like the most is that the idea that the purpose of play, the way play creates its purpose is by giving an intrinsic meaning to the activity for the player. So it's not something that is exclusive to an object, it's not something that we can identify in an object or even in a social context, but we can only situate in an activity as being or an object as being performed by an agent or several agents. And I think that's an interesting way of thinking about purpose, because the more I think about it, I think in general playing is asserting purpose through achieving goals. This is goal-driven. And there's some things, yes, eating me, things like that, there's something there that's wrong. It's not just about goals. There's also the fundamental pleasure that's not goal-driven of playing, that it also helps creating this purpose. But so that's why this is early work. I see it there and then I think, there's something there that's not working. Playthings are designed to, in my opinion, to help us generate this purpose, and so we can do textual analysis or hermeneutic analysis on the playthings in order to see how this object affords a certain purpose creation, but at the same time, this purpose is also driven by a social context. So purpose is not an individual activity, but a collective activity, in my opinion. And the thing that I don't know how to answer is, specifically right now, is what is the purpose of playing? How do we define that purpose of playing? And particularly interesting to me is, how is it socially recognized? How do we recognize that people are playing a particular thing for that particular purpose? Because we all recognize it. It's kind of obvious that some people are playing some things because that's their purpose. But still, how is it recognized? To me, those are first questions that have to do with some kind of correlation between aesthetics and consequences. And so when I look back at the questions of the industry and questions of designing play everywhere, I go back to the idea that while the romantic ideal of the activity of play, of course, has to do with the object and the activity creating their own purposes, we cannot just analyze the purpose of play without observing it in its socioeconomic and technical context. So, the basic question of everything that I've presented today is, how is purpose established in the act of play? To me, that's the first question that I need to answer before I can even start addressing the others. How do I create purpose? Because otherwise, I'm just playing around. I've heard this, I've read this so often. That's like what every time troll. I'm just playing around, this is a joke, don't take it seriously, I'm just playing around. What's the purpose? How do you know? How do you detect that? Why are you playing in that particular way? What's the purpose? Like what's the goal of that activity? It's all about, to me, it's all about purpose. And if we don't define what does it mean for play being an autotelic activity, we are just doomed to go back to not being able to really see the effects that play has on economic systems and the effects that economic systems have on play. We are going to be stuck in a never-ending loop. So my final question in these three sets of things is, why do we play? Not in general, but specifically. What is the autotelic nature of play? So, the end is near. I'm getting to the end of this presentation. I hope I can learn a lot from your questions. I'm not going to be able to answer any of them, but that's going to be great. But just as a sort of a reminder, where are we now? What have I done? There's ethics in the context of games, production and consumption. I need to look at that. I want to look at that because I think that in the case of video games, there's work there that needs to be done. Games as platforms, community management, the economics of hit-driven industries, free-to-play and its ethics, all of those things need to be analyzed. The ethics of play as an interface for automation is critical, and that's kind of very worrisome because I really like doing that work for making mundane life more playfully pleasurable, but it's a problem. And finally, how do we create and negotiate the purpose of play? So I started this keynote saying that back in 2009, the first time I was invited to give a keynote at the Philosophy of Games, I had answers, and now I only have questions. So the way I want to end this is to tell you that I will see you again in 25 years. And that's when, hopefully, I will have some answers to all the questions that I presented today. This is just a research agenda. This is something I want to work with, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts either now or on Philosophy of Games 2043, which is where I probably will have some of the answers. Thank you.
I wonder if we have any questions, anybody? There is first one over there.
Hi, this is maybe quite a confrontational question to start the questions with, and I will try to phrase it in the least confrontational way possible. So you started out and you used the word we a lot. You said, we're not looking at this, we need to look at this. And I want to know your thoughts on how that we is delineated, because I've been reading, particularly the stuff you said about the industry, I've been reading conversations about that for 3.5 years, since I first got into game studies. So why is it there is a we that aren't talking about?
So it's a great question. The we is a Freudian slip. I'm really just trying to present my own agenda. The problem is that I try to self-aggrandize it by talking about we. However, I'm really happy that you mentioned the whole industry problem for the past 3.5 years, because I was not specific about what I mean by saying that I have not studied the ethics of the industry in detail. Because I think that Gamergate has been very widely and deeply analyzed by many different perspectives, and they are all super rich. But when I look at the community of philosophers and ethicists, me included, doing work on the ethics of video games, it's not critics, but it's almost critics. And I think it's definitely a failure of me as an ethicist, and I think I would have liked to see a more immediate reaction, I think, from the community of ethicists working in games. And maybe I didn't see it, so it might also be my bad. Yes.
So my response to that is that you dropped a word, which is academic or professional academic.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
There are loads of people writing on that. None of them have academic jobs.
True.
None of them could probably get academic jobs because, like, I've written on this pieces that I wouldn't know where to send that would take. So we have walls that we need to knock down for this. So.
Absolutely. So you're totally right, and that's why it was so refreshing to see a little bit earlier, but roughly at the same time as Gamergate, seeing the whole games criticism movement emerge as an alternative that's fast-paced, that's thoughtful, and that's very needed to respond to these events. I'm technically an academic philosopher, so I kind of have to talk about the academic environment. So it's a very good distinction that you made, and you're totally right. Yeah. Thanks.
There was one over there. This guy with the mic in the blue shirt.
Yeah, thank you, Miguel. Maybe a version of what's just been said, but also sort of maybe adding a point to. I think academics have addressed many of these issues already and done so in concerted ways within the study of the political economy of everything. And also a lot of what you're saying about industry, I think you could make the argument that that must be done as an analysis of the cultural industries as a whole. So if I say that, or argue that, I immediately want to make a counter-argument that if we stay with it, so basically sort of the move is from the confessions of a textual analyst to someone who wants to study the cultural industry of games production, is then saying, no, I could say to you then, you need to study the cultural industries as a whole, but I think that field is already struggling a little bit with the fact that the cultural industries have been transformed into what you're saying is a sort of platform economy or surveillance capitalism and stuff like that. So I really want to say that I enjoyed this sort of all over the place presentation because I think it is necessary to sort of be all over the place with something like this because it's popping up everywhere. But I also want to say that it has been done in concerted ways, sort of trying to get at the underlying logics of how these things work.
I don't disagree about the...
So there is a research agenda out there. You don't have to say that this is my personal research agenda. A lot of the political economy sort of thinks that this is the question to be answered these days.
But they are political economies. They are not necessarily... Again, we are going to go back into academic ethical research or ethical research. I think there's a lot of excellent work done on calling platform capitalism, calling capitalist realism, all these surveillance capitalism, all of these have been really nicely analyzed by political philosophers, by economists.
Yes.
Ethicists. Where are we?
So do talk a little bit about it.
I think we need to talk more about it. I need to talk more about it. Because otherwise, what is all these years of reading Aristotle and the virtues and the good societies and all that stuff, if there's a development in society that has a widespread effect on the way we treat each other, and the way we develop products, but you're right, to the extent that there's people doing that work.
Economic sociology as well.
Yes.
Lots of interesting things happen.
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk values. In the classic ethical sense. I want to talk values in the classic ethical sense. So but I agree that I want this work to be in the lineage of Mark Fisher and Schlichtness and all these sort of relatively new work done on platform economics and so on.
Did you have a question? You? No. Okay, then it's Gerald next.
Thanks, Miguel, for giving us insights into your new research. I have a question. I don't expect an answer for it because I think it's difficult, which would tie into purpose and also industry.
Yeah.
So let's say the purpose of games is entertainment at first, but then also somehow to enrich our lives, like with fiction in general, like reading books, like watching films, to give us some subversive perspective on our society. But isn't there an ethical gap if you buy games like Bioshock, for instance, which criticize capitalism somehow, but then you also participate in this multi-million-dollar business, like the game is sold 20 millions. Okay, the question would also be valid for film, like The Matrix, etc. And you could say, well, if Bioshock reaches 20 million people, so that's good, and they see capitalism in a different form, but isn't there an ethical gap which is between them? And well, I don't have an answer, so I just wanted to hear your opinion.
I don't have an answer either. I think there's a problem. So the way I think about this, there's been some games like, perhaps Bioshock is an example of it, perhaps not, but there's video games that attempt to reach a mass market and at the same time try to communicate or say or represent something different and therefore sort of affect some measure of change, even though at the same time they are benefiting and participating in this terrible economy, right? So you can always go sort of a consequentialist way and say, well, you know, if the outcome is positive for society, then the answer I have, the way I deal with these things is to admit that I live with contradictions. And that there's an enormous bunch of contradictions that we need to live with, and that part of our ethical being is learn to negotiate and to delineate those compromises that we make with everything. With the way we want to live our lives, with the way we want to establish our relationships, with the way we want to be towards other people and towards ourselves. And so the question is, I'm not trying to sort of expand it to the level of say like it's not about punishment, it's about life. But it is a little bit about that. It's about learning to live with these contradictions in which a depredatory capitalist system can actually produce its counter-discourse. And that counter-discourse can benefit both society and benefit from this system. And it's a contradiction that whoever produces that object and consumes that object needs to be aware of and needs to be able to justify in a deep sense. And perhaps by the end of the day, that's what we academic ethicists should be working with. Learning and teaching how to deal with those complexities. Yeah.
Maybe. I think we are out of time. In the interest of time, this is where we should stop. If you have a really super small question.
Very short question. that would be my answer. Just a question about it seems there's a kind of loss of utopia in your talk, right? So it used to be like the games had a kind of utopia, and then we moved to like a specific kind of games that didn't put us in flow, or games that weren't too directly competitive. Those were the utopias, and now we move to play as a kind of utopia, and now kind of really the COVID style, and now play is just a capitalist tool. And so it seems like when I heard your talk, it seems the only thing that's left is to have a very hard work that's completely joyless to make sure it's not autotelic. So, like, could you comment a bit on that? Like, so is there a hope somewhere? Or?
Yeah, no. So I think I don't want to make an essentialist argument about the nature of play. I think it's my own evolution with my engagement with the activity of play, and particularly as I mentioned before, with living with the contradictions of knowing that we have the tools to make mundanity much more pleasurable, but that process has really serious implications that transcend just whether this thing is fun or not. And so the notion of the utopian was that before that before thinking about this topic for a while, I never questioned that. Like if something was a game with certain qualities and was good, then I became older and jaded. Then it's like, oh, but play is always good. It's like, not really. So let's live with these contradictions. So I think that I'm not trying to